Okay, well, I am a lifelong libertarian. My day job is an attorney and I'm a business owner. I own a law firm headquartered in St. Louis and practicing also in Southern California. Originally a California native, but I moved to the Midwest because of the business climate in California being so difficult. I've been doing practicing law about 12 years. Been a business owner since 2008. And I got involved with the Libertarian Party in 2012. I was counsel for Governor Johnson and his presidential run. I'm also, I was set up to be his counsel again for this run in 2016 when I was asked by some women in the party to consider running for vice president. I thought about it, and at first I was sort of reluctant, to be honest. I've always been in the background, and I've been happy as the lawyer because that's where my skill set is. But I had the opportunity to talk about liberty, to talk about issues that impact small businesses, which I deal with every single day. Um, the opportunity to represent women in the party, to show not just libertarians, but the public at large, the Libertarian Party is inclusive of women, it is inclusive of minorities, inclusive of every human being who believes in liberty. And with that kind of offer presented to me, I just couldn't turn it down. It's more like a call of duty. I think that the effort to show diversity in the party is a good thing. I think that recruiting diverse points of view is a good thing. Not because I believe in sort of left ideas of affirmative action or anything like that, but really because I think that as human beings, we're enriched when we have a lot of different experiences and different ways to see the world and different ways to outreach into the rest of the world. So, all as a group, as liberty loving individuals, I think it's important for us to present this inclusiveness to people who might come from different backgrounds and who are different genders. You know, we've done this really well with the LGBTQ plus community, and I'd love to see us continue to reach out. Well, I don't think that the federal government really should be in education. I would actually like to see the Department of Education be abolished. Uh, Education is important, but it's very inefficient to be run that top down from the federal government. Uh, the Department of Education is not part of one of the enumerated powers that was initially granted to the federal government. It's not really how the Constitution set our country to be, and it wasn't even started until Jimmy Carter, I believe. So we've gone most of American history without a federal Department of Education, and yet we still managed to educate our our children. We still had even high literacy levels in the early part of the 20th century, higher than other parts of the world, even higher than parts of the world would be today in comparison. So, yeah, I think it's perfectly, parents and local communities are perfectly capable of educating their children. My sister homeschools. I have plenty of friends who they take control of their children's education, whether they homeschool or they add to the education in some way because their children have special needs and have learning disabilities, or they're very bright. The education system does not account for the vast diversity of the human mind and human experience and people's capabilities. And the only people who can actually really address the children's needs are the parents who know what those needs are, along with professional educators. So to have the top-down standards pushed down from the federal level, it's not going to best serve the children. It's inefficient economically. I think at its worst, it can be a form of indoctrination, and it's just not what's best for this country. That's why our education, in comparison to other countries, we rank lower. Throwing money at the problem is not solving the problem. So we must have to. There are better ways. I'm in favor of school choice and introducing some free market principles into the education system. But ultimately, I think the federal government needs to get out of the education, let the states handle it, and even preferably more localized communities. First of all, I think that just if I could make a prediction, now we're 2.5 weeks away from uh, the convention. I think that our top runners are more pragmatic uh, candidates, and I think that we're more likely to nominate somebody along that line who's going to appeal a little bit better to the general voter. I personally, I've always been a libertarian. I have a very strong libertarian philosophy. It comes from a moral place within me. But I believe in making changes by planting seeds and taking those baby steps. If we try to just wipe out the whole government, first of all, the rest of the population would not go along with it. They're just not ready for it, and so we would not succeed. Even if we could, let's say tomorrow we could completely get rid of all entitlements, get rid of the entire welfare state. I'm talking Social Security and Medicare and food stamps and everything. There would be rioting. There would be rioting. It would impact our economy. Maybe it'd be good in the long term, but in the short term, it would cause a lot of pain. I don't think that's the best way to get people to come over to what is good and right and economically efficient about libertarianism. It's not just burn down the system because it's more than people can handle. People don't like change, I think, just as part of the human condition. And so if you want to get them to come over to your way of doing things, you've got to do so in a way that steps them slightly out of their comfort zone without scaring them to death. So I really want to talk about the economy in this election because I think the economy is what is driving what we're seeing with the two major parties, and so these upset and this rise of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and then even Bernie Sanders posing such a threat to Hillary Clinton. This is reflection of the pain that people are feeling economically. So we have been now for 8 years in a stagnant economy with low jobs, very low job growth. People are still unemployed. And we're having price inflation. Housing costs are going up. The cost of living is going up. People are feeling poor and they're upset about it. And so what we've got is a group of people supporting Trump who think that the problem with jobs is immigration related. And we have people supporting Bernie Sanders who thinks that the problem with jobs is the banksters. And I mean, they're not totally wrong about that, but they're concerned. They think the answer to the problem of the economy is more regulation by the government. So, in my day job, I am a small business lawyer. I represent entrepreneurs who are trying every day to grow their businesses and create jobs. And it is getting worse and worse and worse. If I just want, I'll give you an example. The other day, I got a call from a client who had an emergency. He called me and said that there were 10 armed police officers at his business's door with a warrant, and he wanted me to come. And the warrant was for the labor commissioner to come in and inspect the building. It wasn't that they had committed any crimes. There wasn't illegal activity going on. And this is just a small family owned business. But somebody had complained that they weren't complying with some of the labor laws, including posters and having the right workers' comp insurance in place. And so the labor commissioner shows up with a bunch of police to come in and, inspect to see whether they have posters. The business had to get shut down. They got fines. They have to pay attorneys now. And, once the labor commissioner looks for one problem, there's usually 10 or 15 other laws they're violating because a lot of these laws are not that intuitive for business owners to understand. And so now you have a position where a small business, family-owned business, might actually get put out of business because they didn't have their labor law posters up. And I get this kind of call every couple of days. And in California, I really see it. Why don't we have jobs? We don't have jobs because government is interfering, because the regulations and the taxes are too high, and the small businesses, which are the engine of our economy and the engine of our job growth, are being put upon so badly that we are losing more small businesses every month, every year than we have new businesses starting up. Not every business in this country is Walmart. We should stop treating them that way. That's why we don't have jobs. That's why people are in pain. And I might add too that what I love about libertarianism is that libertarianism is the answer to this. And I think that we are obligated as libertarians to speak this loudly to the rest of the country, to say, you know what, we have the answer. And the answer isn't more regulations and more taxes and more taxing and spending and more debt. The answer is have the government get out of our way so that we can meet our greatest potentials. what I was going to say is that I was in California, and Missouri is such an improvement over California that I'm still happier, but I live in the city. I do pay that extra income tax. They lose all of these business opportunities in the city because they charge extra income tax. It's crazy to me. The biggest issue in St. Louis, actually, I think there's two major issues. One is an issue of property. There's a lot of derelict property in St. Louis. A lot of it is subject to tax foreclosures. It's just falling down. Beautiful brick homes that are 100 years old, some beautiful craftsmanship that's just derelict and fallen over. And nobody can come in and rehab some of these neighborhoods because they can't get the permission from the alderman. So, there's this push by the city alderman to make sure that the city planning and all the rehab meet certain job requirements and green agendas and things like that, which, sounds like a good idea, but the result is that no developers come in, and the city continues to fall down. And of course, the city lose taxes on their property because nobody's living in the property, but apparently that's not enough of a motivation for them. So there's a real property problem in St. Louis, and there's a poverty problem in St. Louis as a result. Of course, we have the Black Lives Matters issues. We have serious crime in the city of St. Louis. A lot of problems between our minority communities and in the inner city and the police. I live right in the city. I don't live in the worst part of the city by any means. I live in a nice part of the city that's starting to rehab and gentrify. But my neighbors are still largely Black, and we're white. My husband's white, but the other day, or in the last couple of years, he's been pulled over by the police at gunpoint twice. There's just like a lot of police activity in St. Louis, and I've talked to my neighbors several times about their feelings about the Black Lives Matters and what's going on with police, and the sentiment that I always hear from them is that they're really upset about the rioting. They don't like the rioting. They don't want to see their neighborhoods being trashed and things being torn down. They do think it makes things worse, but they're frustrated by the lack of um, recognition of the serious problem that we have with the police officers. And the police, for their part, are really frustrated because they feel like they're always in a position of danger, and they feel like they're in an impossible position too. I mean, one of my other neighbors is a police officer, and he's been shot 6 times. So, it just goes to show you like the tension that's going on there. And I personally believe that most of this is attributed to the drug war. And if we got rid of the prohibition laws on drugs, even if it was just marijuana to start, but methamphetamine is kind of a bigger one here in the Midwest. If we could get rid of some of these prohibition laws, that it would massively reduce the crime in our inner cities, massively reduce the jail overcrowding, and the Black community wouldn't constantly be seeing their family members being put into jail and their lives ruined over a drug war that's not effective. Yeah, the delegation selects directly the vice presidential candidate. So what will happen is that there'll be nominations from the floor for the presidential candidate. They'll be voting, and then after that, there'll be nominations on the floor from for the vice presidential candidate. Whoever wins the presidential nomination can, of course, endorse somebody, but the delegation is fully free to elect whoever it is that they think best represents libertarian values and will do the job. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about the convention. I have full faith in the delegation picking a good libertarian candidate. I'm just excited to present my case to them.